Welcome back to this episode of the Strong Mind Podcast. This episode is with Alec Blenis. Alec is a hybrid athlete. He just finished a marathon in the Swiss Alps, I believe, which was really intense. He's an obstacle course racer. He's a personal trainer. He's got really awesome takes on fitness and health and what good training looks like and what bad influencers often do in the fitness space. We had a really great conversation. Talked about a lot of different things. I really enjoyed talking to Alec, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. Peace.
We'll jump in.
I'm doing it right now. So, Alec, first and foremost, appreciate you being here again, man. But you just alluded to the fact that I jokingly said, like, you're Instagram famous, right? And you said, which I think is a key point for a lot of people, you're just going to the gym and you're taking video and then you're putting up your thoughts, right? But like over the past 5-ish years, like since you've been doing this, like what's changed or evolved for you? Or is it just you're just speaking your mind about what you think is good training, is meaningful in the fitness space? Like talk me through your thought process a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of people who are successful in the industry in the online space will echo sort of the same advice, which is don't try to become internet famous, just focus on being good at your job and, kind of whatever happens. And I think for the most part, that's good advice. And I try to live by that. I do think we have to be strategic in how we market ourselves and how we put ourselves out there. If we do want to grow, we got to do something to stand out. But by and large, it is just a matter of actually doing the thing well, not trying to win the internet or come up with a viral video or whatever. Just consistently put out good information. The truth will out, so to speak. If you put out good stuff on a consistent basis, not like once in a blue moon, but like every week you're coming back with a consistent message, having a consistent brand, and that what you do resonates with people, I think you're going to be successful in the long run. So over the last, 5 years, as I've gained popularity, I think there's been a few times when I've kind of fallen into the trap of, how can I get more followers? How can I reach a wider audience? And I think back to those moments in time where I was thinking that, and I think it was a mistake pretty much every time to be even thinking that way.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you don't have to be Instagram famous, so to speak, to make a really good living and to have an impact on a lot of people. I see a lot of people chase the numbers, chase the virality in a way, and they struggle to monetize. They struggle to have an influence. They struggle to be known for who they are as a person. Maybe they have a hilarious meme page with like 200,000 followers, but no one knows who's sitting behind the screen, right? So I think that if you keep it personal, if you have a personality behind it, a personal brand behind it, and just focus on your actual ability to help people, I think you can have a much bigger influence at 10,000 people, and I think you can make a better living at 10,000 people than you can trying to race to 100K kind of thing.
Yeah. Pandering doesn't really work because the people like that. So this is one thing I think in the fitness space, it's really, if you want to grow an audience, just bitch about the stuff that you hate, right?
Yeah.
And that can work for growing an audience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to benefit from I'm actually getting to work with people I want to work with, right? And either in the fitness space, I kind of make this joke. It's like, it's either your butt, you're arguing with people, or you have a really, really weird take that you're going to become the target of stuff. But no, I really appreciate that. And I think I'm reading this book about like how social media has made us it's really affecting kids. Like the Gen Z mind has been distorted because of social media, right? And it's easy for even adults to fall into these traps it's literally this stuff has been engineered to like keep us inside of it, right? Yeah. And really for like a person like you or me, like my goal is to help people in a way that they will give me money so that I can keep my business going as, relatively altruistically as that relationship can occur. And I think people just lose sight of keep the goal, because of, and if you're good, you're probably going to grow in the way that is meaningful to you too. Right.
Yeah.
So What I mean, this is kind of just a segue into, are you team hybrid or are you team like I don't give a shit what it's called? I can't remember. I was like trying to differentiate this.
um, I mean, I don't know if they're mutually exclusive. I
Yeah,
frankly
I
don't
don't think they
care.
are.
I don't care what it's called. I like the term hybrid, and I like that it is becoming trendy because I think it's pushed a lot of people in the right direction, and it's pushed a lot of people to have more fun with their training and take a more varied, sustainable, long-term approach to training. So I think by and large, it's been a really great trend to see. I think some of the criticisms and jokes and memes and whatnot are certainly warranted, and I make them myself because they're hilarious.
Yeah.
But I think that it can be fun to kind of make fun of hybrid at the athlete's expense while also encouraging it as a healthy trend.
Well, it's like I'm a big believer. So I really like Will Rattel, and I had him on my podcast, and like good training is kind of like pornography, like when you see it type of thing, right? And
Yeah.
but that can look so many different ways. Like what Will's doing is awesome. Is fun. It kind of scratches like the CrossFit itch, that more so than me just going and doing squat, bench, deadlift type stuff, right? What you're doing in the like the movements that you're loading, is like, oh, that's cool. And it's still like, it's novel, but it's still like actually loading it, right? As opposed
Right.
to, hey, let's do some hip airplanes with no weight. And then after that first week, when you got like a semi glute med pump, you're like not figuring out how to load this anymore, right? But
Yeah.
kind of, okay, so this is actually going to take me back because my first exposure to you, I don't remember how long ago this was, but was when you broke the Fran record, right? How long
The
ago?
Murph record. Yeah.
The Murph record, sorry.
Broke the
Murph
Murph
record.
record in was it 2021? I want to say. I could
Okay.
be wrong. I think it was 21.
What
Yeah.
was your time?
32:41 for the unpartitioned format.
Okay.
So often people will break it up as
Yeah.
like, rounds of 70 or whatever, but I just did it straight through and took about 2 minutes off the previous record.
What was the hardest part?
Uh,
And you don't have
you
to have a
know,
good answer.
I don't want to say it wasn't hard because like I did it as fast as I could, but
Mm-hmm.
with the unpartitioned format is way more about just like the muscular endurance and pacing
Mm-hmm.
yourself so that you don't burn out and then just like you can't do another
Good.
push-up kind of thing.
Yeah.
So just kind of this like patience game and trusting your training and like knowing what you can sustain. Because I'm just sitting there and I know like I can do 5 push-ups every 12 seconds, right? And I'm like, I know I've done this in the past. I know I can do it again, but just doing 5 push-ups every 12 seconds is it's not that hard. It's kind of boring. Or you should like sitting there, like, I hope the wheels don't fall off. I hope my arms don't just like stop working.
Yeah.
But it's not like that hard, if that makes sense.
You
And
kind
at
of
the
just
end,
describe you kind
yeah,
of just describe the evolution of CrossFit from like go absolutely balls to the walls until you can't do something anymore to like the gamification of it, which is cool, but like the old mentality of like when CrossFit was like fresh, right?
yeah,
To all right, let's make this like sustainable and like kind of figure out how to like compete with it, right? Which is cool.
yeah. Well, when I watched the previous record and I was watching Hunter McIntyre go through it, and I saw where his pacing kind of fell apart a little bit, I
Yeah.
was like, oh, if I just fix that mistake, that will be easier and whatnot. So I'm like, come up with the strategy of, okay, if I can stick to this pace for these movements, etc., then that will break the record. And then once you have that broken down and you break it into these small chunks, you start going through it and you're like, this isn't that bad. And in the end, you got to run a hard mile, and that kind of sucks. Like, I want to throw up for a couple of minutes, but like
Yeah.
overall, it's certainly not the worst thing I've done. I'd consider it one of the easier events that I did. It was just strategy and a little bit of specific prep.
Yeah. Super cool. All right. So Um, did you let's talk about you posted this not very long ago. I'm creeping on you, but like you talked about being a slowish kid or not like you're kind of how you developed in the type of athlete you wanted to be, right?
Yeah.
But like just take me through kind of you don't need to give me your full biography, but like your mindset about why am I doing this, like why did I start training, how does it make me feel, and like I honestly think that's the story that a lot of people kind of have to develop, and then finding enjoyment alongside that story.
Yeah.
Because for me personally, like I it's really easy. I coach my nephew's soccer team, and they're 5 and 6. And a little girl yesterday was like, "I'm not scoring," and I'm like, "It's okay. You're 5 years old. If you keep showing up, it's gonna be okay." But like that type of stuff, where if you don't think you're good at something at 5 years old, that will project, right? And well, I loved soccer growing up, but then I just kind of hit my like, I hit puberty and I was like slow and uncoordinated. And how I kind of fell in love with fitness is I just went to the course that we had to run 3 miles to like prepare for soccer, and I just started running it, and I got better at it. And I'm like, okay, I can do this, and that gave me that's literally why like I'm here today to some extent, right? But
Yeah.
tell us about your journey and like what's that look like for you?
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes I think it can be hard to look back and be able to accurately say like this is why I made the decisions I made when I was 7 years old or whatever.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Our memory is not that good. Yeah.
Memory's not that good. I can kind of guess around a couple of things, but um I think I was always motivated more by just kind of having fun with things than anything else. Didn't have it in my brain to try to be like some hyper competitive like world record holder or anything like that from a young age. Partly because I didn't shine at anything on like prodigy level where it's like you pick up one sport and they're like, oh god, this kid's like incredible at running, you got to pursue that and take it to the nth degree. I just kind of did a bunch of stuff. I was okay, I was not bad, I wasn't good. I was just kind of a middle of the pack athlete at pretty much everything I tried. Which on the one hand, I guess the impressive part, or where I'm a little bit better than some other people in terms of natural talent, was I just wasn't bad at anything. Like everything I tried, I was at least kind of good at, but I didn't have anything that I was like, yeah, this is my sport kind of thing. So the further along I progressed, getting into like high school and stuff like that, I just had a hard time choosing a sport. So I just tried to keep doing all of them.
Yeah.
I tried to do cross country and football and soccer and wrestling and track and like play pickup basketball with my neighbors. And like I was just trying to do all of the things. And oftentimes that came at the expense of truly being good at any of those things. I remember, I guess the spring semester, I would do, or no, winter, kind of late winter, early spring. I would get through a full wrestling practice and then try to make it to the back half of soccer practice. And I remember showing up one day after just getting like absolutely cooked in wrestling, show up for soccer, like just as they're wrapping up like skills and drills and whatnot. And they're like, all right, we're gonna do conditioning now. I'm like, bro, I just came from like an hour
The
wrestling
hardest
practice. Now I'm
conditioning.
now I'm doing soccer conditioning. And it just led to doing some like pretty stupid stuff, probably not optimal as we would say today. But it certainly gave me like really good exposure to a lot of different things. But I kind of bounced around for a while, struggling to really be good at anything until I kind of stumbled upon obstacle course racing via Spartan Race. Just found a nearby event. It looked cool. Signed up for it and absolutely crushed it. Like I was kind of not expecting to do as well as I did at my first obstacle course race. I made the podium, a couple minutes off of first place as like a 16, 17-year-old kid who had just been trying to play every single sport they could. But my experience with track, with cross country, and then just being strong, like lifting with the football team and that kind of stuff, I think set me up really well to do well in obstacle course racing. And it was the most fun I think I had ever had doing a sport. So it's like, I got to do more of these. I got to find some more of these events. And that first one had been a 5K. A couple months later, and I'd gotten my dad into it at the time too. So we're kind of looking together, like, let's find more of these obstacle course races. And they had a half marathon one in the mountains. It was like a couple months later, and I had never run anything that far before in my life. But based on like some of the stuff they had written about the race, they're like, it should take, top runners like 90 minutes or so. So I'm like, oh, I can run for 90 minutes. What was the first ever Spartan Beast, like that distance category of Spartan race. And it was in the mountains of Vermont. No one knew what they were expecting. We get out there, it's not a 90-minute race. Like I see my watch roll over at the 2-hour mark. And I'm like, I don't see an end in sight kind of thing. watch rolls over 3 hours. I'm like, what is what is happening? Just like completely falling apart. I've never done anything like that. And I think it ended up taking like 3.5 hours. It was just a absolute beast of a course. Um, Pretty life-changing event, I think, just for me, having not been challenged on that level before in my life, to go out and you think you're going to run for an hour and a half, and all of a sudden you're 3 hours into a race in the mountains carrying a sandbag up a ski slope. And I'm just like, what is happening to me right now? Like, what did I sign up for? But just to be able to get through something like that was really empowering, really life changing. Made me fall in love with it even more. A couple months later, I saw a 50-mile ultra marathon. And at the time, I was still 17 years old. I had never heard of anyone my age doing an ultra marathon, but I was like riding the high of finishing that Spartan beast, carrying sandbags up the mountain for a couple hours. I was like, I can do anything. I'm invincible. So I signed up, did a 50 miler, did pretty well. And I think that's where I kind of started to discover that, like, the set of skills I developed through, exposure to a wide range of sports, being strong, being kind of fast. It's like, I'm really durable. I'm really resilient. I might not be the fastest person I know. I might not be the strongest person I know, but I can just keep moving. So I got really into ultras. I got really into Spartan races, got signed to the Spartan Race Pro team, ended up doing almost 100 of those, did a couple dozen ultra marathons over the next couple of years, and just kind of went all in on that side of things. But I had experienced up to that point just kind of the power of strength training. So I kept it up. This is before people were really calling it hybrid, or at least certainly before I was calling it hybrid. It was just me continuing to try to be good at everything I could, and trying to be as good as possible at obstacle course racing, because like those sandbag carries would kick my butt. I was a smaller kid. I was like 5'5", 140 pounds. So I was like, I got to get as strong as I can for this. Started doing super heavy lunges. Started doing like squats for sets of 100, that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's kind of the origin story.
I love it. So no, it's super cool to hear. And have you ever read Range by David Epstein?
I have not read that one.
It's a good book, and I like, it's more about the Tiger Woods versus like the Roger Federer track to proficiency. And I think just from the mental standpoint, I think Roger Federer had more like a experience with life in a joyful way. But I'm always at odds with like specialization versus generalization. This is kind of where I want to go to into a little bit, because um specialization is like a foundational principle of strength and conditioning, right? But there's also just general physical preparedness and being able to do a wide variety of tasks like really well. And I think that's what a lot of just my sense of like maybe what your programming looks like. I think it's called Sex and Zombies is one of your programs. What's the other one, the new one you got?
So I have Sex and Zombies and Thick and Quick.
Thick and Quick. I like to see, that's good branding. Well done.
Yeah, thank you.
So, which is most of what this stuff is, and it's like not like and that's okay. Like, I think one of the most powerful things that I've learned to do is like label stuff that people get into it.
Yeah.
Like, label the workout, right? Make it something they want to do. But when it comes to like, let's talk about that specialization versus generalization. Like, what do you think the traditional fitness space gets wrong?
Well, I think that the traditional fitness space, like most of the people that I work with, most of the people that engage with my content and that kind of stuff, they're not like 18-year-olds trying to be the best in the world at their sport. They're often people in their 20s, 30s, 40s that are kind of discovering fitness later in life. Or maybe they did one sport in their youth. Maybe they were cross-country athletes or runners or something like that when they were teenagers, and now here they are in their 40s, and now they're into bodybuilding, but they also want to be able to like play, pickleball or something with their friends. Like, people's interests are pretty varied, I would say, and they don't necessarily have 20, 30 years of consistent training under their belt. And so I think that a lot of people who decide to get into a sport, say your average person who like picked up running over COVID, right? Like, I know a lot of people during the pandemic, they got super into running and they're like, oh, I'm going to run a marathon at age 40. they're going to want to approach fitness, they're going to want to approach marathon training a lot differently than someone who has been running since they were 12 years old, right? Or playing sports since they were 12 years old. I find the biggest miss is that people don't have a really strong base of general physical preparedness, and they try to specialize really, really early on, not from a matter of age, but from training age. You know, they've just picked up running at age 40, they've been running a year, and they're already training like a specialist, when they don't have, you know, good general athleticism, they don't have good strength and power, they don't know how to, they're just not good runners, period. They can't sprint, they don't have any of those, you know, base qualities, and then here they are trying to ramp up for a marathon. So I think there's a huge market for just making people more generally physically prepared so that they can, you know, build that strong general base to be able to pursue whatever specific objective calls to them, you know, next year, the year after, if they want to get into rock climbing or if they want to get into tennis or whatever it is, just to be able to have fun with life. Most people don't have that really broad athletic base.
Yeah. Your voice always comes in the back of my head when I kind of want to, it's not that I'm not the nocebo oriented, like you're doing, some people legitimately, a lot of people's problems stem from doing too much too soon, right? But
Yeah.
a lot of that is also in combination with most Americans, most people are not doing enough physical activity in general, right? So it's like you always have to find that balance of like, hey, Jim bro, like the reason that your shoulder hurts is because you went and, you know, AMRAP 225 and then you went and over and did some really dumb like
Yeah.
right? And you're not capable of handling the loads you're subjecting yourself. But I always try to keep the narrative of like make a pivot, keep training, you know, don't stop. I literally talked to somebody this morning who was like, she was told to stop doing stuff she loved. And I'm like, that is not the solution here, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
dosage of it is. But so I hear your voice because I'm like, all right, don't like change your wording a little bit. And I think that's
Yeah.
just always because it is true. Like most people they don't walk enough. They don't just generally do any strength training. They don't do enough just like easy conditioning, right? Um, but my intro, or like my other big intro into just like strength and conditioning was like CrossFit, right? And back when I started, I think it was like 2008 or 9 ish. You know, CrossFit was like putting itself out as kind of a way to, it was just very different than your classic like upper lower split type of working out and or just stuff that wasn't frankly even very hard, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to like, do you think like, and I don't want to shit on CrossFit because I think CrossFit's awesome, but I also think how it's being implemented anymore is like not the best per se. Would you agree with that? Would you take issue with that? What would you say when it comes to CrossFit style training? Because some people would look at what you do and like, well, this is CrossFit, and it's like, yeah, maybe, I don't know, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think that at least in my experience, and like CrossFit is not my primary wheelhouse, but I think that there used to be more consistency with like you go to 5 different CrossFit boxes. You know, if you went to 5 different CrossFit boxes like 10, 15 years ago, I think they would all deliver a fairly similar experience. But I think like the what people call CrossFit has like branched out into
Yeah.
like all these different things where I can talk to 5 different people that do CrossFit and then ask them what that looks like. And it's so different, that it's hard to just like I'd want to know if someone tells me they do CrossFit, I don't make any assumptions. I'm like, tell me about what that looks like, because
Yeah.
it can mean so many different things. I think that people who train for CrossFit as a sport in a like effective, methodical way, I think it's a really great, you know, varied approach to training. I think that the kind of old school traditional, just like do something new every day, do some metcon like redlining every single day. I don't think that that's always the best approach, and not something I'd recommend for people. But if you take a more like individualized methodical approach to it and say, okay, these are my weak points, these are the skills I need to develop, I think that that can be great. So I know it's like a really vague answer, but I feel like CrossFit as a term has become so vague, it's hard to like have extremely specific thoughts about it, if that makes sense.
No, it's 100% right, and I think you're on it too because it's the brand is differentiated by like I know there's a gym nearby that like they're a CrossFit gym, and I'm pretty sure their program is just kind of like it's like periodized like block periodization type of stuff with like some strength work and then some conditioning, and it's not really, it could be drastically different than somebody doing like the quote unquote main site WOD or whatever that even looks like anymore.
Yeah.
The sport of CrossFit has really like it's like the fitness component of it is super different, and like just thinking that people get like, what is CrossFit anymore, and that's probably like a branding problem on CrossFit's front, right? But
Right.
what do you think of High Rocks? Are you into that? Do you think it's cool? Do you that's like, this is my big thing, is like I saw something a couple days ago. It's like, is High Rocks the new like functional fitness leader? I'm like, okay, this is a good question to ask. I don't really care, but
Yeah, I think it's I mean, I think it's great that people love it. I'm shocked actually at its popularity, and in hindsight it makes perfect sense. But when I first heard of it, I was like, nah, I don't see this going anywhere. I was like, it's just like, it's boring, it's inside, it's the same thing every time. Like I don't see this catching on, but it's worked super well. And I guess people like that consistency. They like being able to compete with each other around the world and have that, you know, time over time, year over year improvement, testing themselves in the same course. They know what to expect.
yeah.
But yet it's a good challenge. So while I was a little bit shocked to see people take to it as they have, I think it's great. It's really popular at my gym. A lot of people are training for it. Gets people to push harder at cardio, which I always think is it's always something I advocate for. So I like seeing people who are, into either group fitness or like kind of a strength biased approach to CrossFit. I love seeing some of these people be like, okay, I need to spend some more time on the erg. I'm gonna get, start running a little bit. I think it's great to see people get into the endurance side of it a little bit more. My personal bias, I am kind of bored by repeating the same workout indoors.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool to see how much people have latched onto it.
I think what I've been thinking and ruminating about is CrossFit has kind of become like, if you confuse, you lose a little bit. There's almost so much you have to be prepared for that
Yeah.
it can take away from just the average person feeling like they're adequate, right? Whereas it's like, I think, is it like 8 stations or something like that, or whatever it is? It's like, all right, I
Yeah.
got 8 things I can, in combination with other things that I can get on. But like, I mean, my big thing with CrossFit is it just got so overwhelming to think I have to get good at it. Like, not, this wasn't a big thing. It was just like, I kind of also realized like, I don't really care about some of these things.
Yeah.
But and I'm not that great of an athlete in general, but it was like, damn, I gotta really freaking work on my triple unders now or whatever.
Right. Right.
Who cares? So when it comes to like, well, this is you wearing the Anti-Fragile Lifting Club. Is that yeah, rep that brand. Did that actually come from like reading the Sem Taleb, or was it you heard about the concept? I know you're a physicist by background, and right, you were in
Yeah.
like, is it stress strain type stuff, or where did that come from for you?
Yeah. So, and I got to give credit where credit is due to my apparel designer. I was talking with him, like, I want to come up with some apparel. I told him like, these are the messages that are important to me. So I just had a conversation, like, I want to convey to people that you're more resilient than you think, your body's not as fragile as you think. And I just started having a conversation with him about, this is my coaching philosophy. I want some apparel that conveys this idea.
Yeah.
And he sends me back, he's like, what do you think of this? And it was this. I'm like, that's brilliant. Like, I love you for coming up with that. So I didn't come up with the logo and the name itself. I just talked to my designer and was like, this is what I want to tell people. And he came up with it. So props to him. Couldn't love it more. I think it's a great, just like simple way to get that message across to people. Happy to expand on it. But yeah, at the end of the day, my biggest beef with the fitness industry, especially working as like a personal trainer at a big chain gym, is just not even, I don't know if dishonesty is the right word, because sometimes I feel like the majority of trainers are doing what they do with a good heart. But we feed people this narrative that keeps them from truly being independent from our care and from our services. We upsell people to train more frequently. We tell people that would probably get better on their own that they need 16 PT sessions. for their low back pain, that kind of stuff. And it just drives me nuts how we're always trying to like squeeze every last nickel out of people.
Yeah.
When to get people really fit and healthy and out of pain, whatever it is, they can use some guidance, but I think we severely, severely over guide, over prescribe, over handhold, to pad our own pockets.
Yeah.
Where I don't think that it's necessary. I think if we change the model and instead of thinking, how can I get $1,000 out of this person? I'd rather someone pay me $125 for one really good hour that sets them up for success. I never have to see him again. And then my question is, how can I help more people? Rather than how can I squeeze more money out of the person that's in front of me right now?
Yeah.
And I think that all comes back to this kind of like message of fragility of like, you're not going to get better without my help, or you need more technique cueing so you don't get hurt, or whatever it is. We just kind of find ways to keep people in the system. And I don't even think we always realize that what we're doing is wrong or misguided, but I think that whole system and narrative needs to change.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of good things in there. And I mean, self-interest is a really hard thing to navigate, right? Because like, I got a family, like I got a feed, like
Yeah.
I mean, like my wife's 35 weeks pregnant. I'm like, I gotta figure out how to keep this going while also like navigate, like, because I honestly I was in the traditional healthcare system and it just wasn't how I wanted to practice in a lot of ways, right? And at this stage, it's like I'm trying to create an ecosystem that makes people's lives better. So in a lot of ways, I've just like turned my coaching in my community into um, like it's kind of like life coaching. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, what are the habits we need to develop for you to feel good? What are your, I am programming for people and I'm helping them with that type of stuff. Like, and I have power lifters and a variety of clients on my roster, but like I literally had a woman who just got done running like an ultra marathon like last week, and I'm like, yeah, what are your next goals? And she's like, I'm like, what are your next goals and do you want to work together, right? And she's like, I think I'm gonna go on my own for a while. And it's like, damn, I'm sad to see you leave, but that's okay. Like that's what this
Yeah.
is about,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly.
And but it's hard to do that because you're like, damn, I need to leave. Like, you were such a good client. How do I trick you back into working with me? And it's like,
Yeah.
well, if you do a good job, and this kind of goes back to what you were talking about earlier, it's like competency and like good growth lead to good opportunities, because of the fact that
Yeah.
like right now, um you're Train Heroic. I don't really care how you're doing on Train Heroic, but I'm sure you're doing okay, right? Like,
Yeah.
because you've grown to a point where you can kind of demonetize, and that's what people don't think about, right? And so there's a lot of different ways to succeed in business, and some of it is just things are going to take time and you got to figure out how to make it work, but it's just fear is a primal emotion, right? It's so
Yeah.
easy to capitalize on fear and negativity. And even just I really wrestle with like even one of my posts today, I actually like scheduled multiple posts, which I didn't mean, which is just navigating Instagram. But today it was like, how do I convey that like one way of thinking is not advantageous to your growth, but it sounds so simple. And like, if I just fix my technique, and I think you were talking about this yesterday too, if I just fix my technique and go get my testosterone checked and like do these three things that you just check the box and all of life will be good. Like, it's like, no,
Yeah.
it's like an evolving process, right? But
Yeah.
um
Yeah.
I don't need your like content creation like system per se, but like your post yesterday, I think it was yesterday, about like somebody came up to you and be like, I could do what you can do, or if I had as good a technique or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
do those narratives take hold, and like why are they so hard to combat?
Oh man, I think that people they want quick fixes, um, and they want to do anything other than
Train hard.
have patience and train hard. And it's not that they're intentionally doing that. I don't think people are intentionally lazy. It's just when you put, two things side by side, which one sells better? Hey, there's going to be some aches and pains along the way. You're not going to feel great all the time. Work your ass off for 10 years and you're going to be in better shape. Like, is that an easier sell? Or is it easier to say, you know, buy my course for $300? I'll teach you how to squat without pain.
Yeah.
Um, people are like, they're like, I'll try that one first. Like, I'm just going to spend the money. I'm going to try the thing, see how it goes. And you just fall down this rabbit hole of like chasing these things that like, that seems easier. That seems easier. That seems easier. But then you stack that up over, years and years of your journey. And you've really just kind of gone around in these circles of looking for the quick way out of pain, or the quick way to improve performance or whatever it is, versus the like embracing the plateau of like, if you're actually training effectively, if you're doing a good job, your progress is going to be slow enough that at times you feel like you're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I think that's really frustrating for people. People reach that point, and probably because there's some, salesperson on the other side somewhere promising that they can help them faster than is realistic. People are just not comfortable sitting in that region where it's like, yeah, your workouts are probably going to look about the same for a couple weeks in a row. Like, you're not going to be any stronger, noticeably. You're not going to be noticeably stronger next week than you were this week, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think it's hard for people to be comfortable with that when there's always some voice out there saying, you could do better. Look at me. Look at my client transformations that are, only the top 1% of transformations that I get, or
Yeah.
Photoshop transformations, or whatever it is. People think that that's the norm, and they get frustrated when that doesn't happen for them.
Yeah. Your take on that was a big one that helped me, because I've always been like kind of wrestling with like, dude, I read starting strength as like a 19-year-old kid, and I looked at like that 16-week progression from like a 135 squat to like a 405 squat, and then I'm like, I tried it, and I think I got to like 275, and I'm like, I'm broken, like I can't do this, and then
well, that's
like,
crazy though.
yeah, and that was like, it was like, that's actually pretty good progress, right? Like, but
Yeah.
you become unhappy, you become dissatisfied because there's this ideal put forth in a book on paper, that one dude who was probably genetically like, I'm not saying that that's never happened, but it's usually like there's genetic outliers that's going to happen, right?
Well, and that's what gets me with like, I'm hesitant of like whether or not I should name names. Maybe I won't. Famous internet like Instagram sensation physical therapists, they'll do like a case study or like an example of a client that came in, and they're like, my client so and so had like debilitating shoulder pain, came in, we did this like one drill, tweaked his bench technique, and now he's pain free. And it's like, you got rid of someone's debilitating shoulder pain in one session. Like,
Yeah.
maybe that happened. Like, I'm not going to
Yeah.
say you're lying.
Yeah.
But if you're going to tell me that that's what happens with most shoulder pain cases, then you're absolutely lying. And I think the way that those cases are portrayed is then the millions of people that follow this, and they're like, debilitating shoulder pain, that's what I have. You got rid of it in one session. Like, what the hell's wrong with me?
What's your magic trick?
You
Yeah.
know? So yeah, it's like, what's the magic trick? But also like,
The
how come
appeals,
I can't do
the
that?
appeals to authority on that page, I know exactly who you're talking to. The appeals to authority, like who he brings on, and like, or even who he stitches in. I'm not gonna name names because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, he's probably a really nice guy, and he's
Right.
probably, this is the hard part about the human brain, is like, and some Austin Jokum actually got on me for this because I had him on my podcast. He's like, no, those dudes are doing evil, like fuck them. Like, but the unfortunate thing about the human mind and confirmation bias is like, he is probably helping people. And I had Greg Lehman on last week. And Greg's like, yeah, you can help. It's really the narrative, and it's giving people options, because you can help people with kettlebells, right? You can help people in a lot of ways, and that's okay. But like, giving people options is great, but it's the narrative around it. And like, yeah, if you did fix somebody's debilitating like squat pain, and it really does look like they were doing something really janky when they were squatting, like, I can buy that. But like a world champion, like there was there was a post on like an Olympic weightlifter who he like brought in, did a bunch of like goofy exercises, and I'm like, no, you just deloaded her for like 6 weeks, and that like that makes sense, but like you can't convey that to somebody who doesn't get it, right? Which is a lot of what like the rehab exercise, like the rehab exercise stuff is like, oh, these things are what I did, and it's like, no, you just deloaded your system, and then you started to reload it, like, and that's okay, but calling it this other thing makes people feel like
it drives me nuts, because I think that a lot of people, they only operate in this like social media world where they go on and they're like, oh, I don't like, what's the harm? It's helping some people, whatever. And sometimes I wonder, I'm like, do you work with real people in a real gym? Because I see every day the negative downstream consequences
Yes.
of this, of
Yep.
people that come in and have false beliefs and expectations. And they come in and they think that they need to do this core stability drill and then they're going to be fixed. And like, well, that's not really what's going on. Like, there's a little bit more to it. And you try to explain it and they look at you like you don't know what you're talking about because they read whatever from some charlatan on the internet. So it's really, really frustrating to me when like just people that don't actually train real people in real gyms and don't see the downstream effects of this, they're like, oh, what's the big deal? Like they're probably helping some people. And like I get how you could say that, but it also reveals to me that like you don't see the other side. And it's so frustrating. It makes their job as fitness professionals so much harder.
Yeah. I mean, someone this morning I did a console call with, and she was like, they told me not to do anything that hurt. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's so you're just gonna not like live in a bubble for the rest of your life? Because to some extent, yes, we need to tease out like what is going on from like tissue irritation stuff, but like, dude, like there's a tremendous amount of fear in that statement, because if you say don't do anything that doesn't hurt and then you do something that hurts, that just feeds forward, right?
Well, and it's crazy because they'll be like, don't do anything that hurts except like, all right, we're gonna release your psoas. This is gonna hurt
Yeah.
pretty bad. And
Yeah.
hey, we're gonna do some dry needling. This is gonna hurt a little bit.
Yeah.
And then they're like, all right, go home. Don't do anything that hurts. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I've been
Yeah. So
everything
wait,
we did just hurt.
yeah, what's the good, where's the good pain and where's the bad pain, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, it's and that's why a lot of times I just think the hard part about like the physical therapy or the chiropractic profession, and it's not that these professions can't be useful and good. I think we've got too many of them. There's too many of them. But when you pay $100,000 plus for an education, you're
Mm-hmm.
gonna create a lot of biases towards like the things you do. And I literally went through my own existential crisis, right? Of like, all right, Kelly Starrett was leading me wrong. Like, and don't get me wrong, like Kelly Starrett there's probably some advantageous things that he's done, but also some of it just doesn't fit very good narratives. But you spend money for an education and then it comes out on the other side. Like, and this is why I appreciate the fact that you were in hard sciences, because it's like, and then the other big thing that I lean into is just communication and like psychology and trying to just understand people. And I don't think enough people think those are useful enough skills to really spend time working on. So they just go to another continuing education course about releasing the psoas, right?
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
um, I don't know where I was going with that rant, but that's just where I'm at. So um, last like couple big questions because I want to respect your time, but like, I gotta ask you about the Angus and what's his name debate, the Atlas and
Atlas.
Angus.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
How did you feel conducting that debate? I love Angus. I've never talked to Atlas. They're two interesting characters in my fitness space, but was that beef for the sake of beef, or is there actually like things to navigate in those conversations that are meaningful in your opinion?
I think that there's definitely like some meaningful conversation to be had. I think we always exaggerate, beef from a social media perspective. And I think that if you ask Atlas and Angus independently how much of it was real beef versus exaggerated beef, they might have different perspectives.
Yeah,
Maybe one of them took it a little bit more seriously than the other, which is fine. Um, but I think that there's definitely some valid things to talk about there, especially around like the knees over toes kind of ATG stuff, and whether that's been a net positive or net negative, or like what has the impact of that been on the fitness community and like broader population, and what could we do to make that better, or what could have done better, to maybe mitigate some of the negative effects from it. I think there's a lot of good things to talk about there. I think that Atlas kind of came at it from the perspective of like, yeah, the narrative isn't always exactly right, but it's gotten people doing more exercise, so like it's a win, and I love it kind of thing. And Angus kind of came at it from the opposite perspective of like, yeah, maybe it's gotten a few more people to exercise, but the narratives are so bad, it's made people probably feel weaker and more fragile in the long run than otherwise. It's like, can we really quantify it? You
yeah,
know, And a question I was trying to ask them is like, your perspective on this probably comes down a lot to like, who are the people that you train, and like where do you work out, and who are you interacting with in the fitness space? Are you mostly seeing just people create content about it on the internet? Are you seeing real people in real gyms? Are you at a global gym? Are you at a powerlifting gym? And I think that it's hard to be able to know exactly what the impact has been on the overall population when we all just kind of live in our own little bubbles in our own different gyms. So we're all going to have very different perspectives on like what the impact is, depending on, again, what bubble we live in.
Yeah, 100%. It's pretty much like polarizing dynamics and like what conversation you're trying to have, and then are we talking to each other? Are we talking through each other? Which I listen to some of it, and because I think Angus is probably one of the he's a breath of fresh air as far as like he kind of says he says what he's got an agenda, like everybody's got an agenda, but
Yeah.
Angus is like just he's off the beaten path from like
Yeah.
a lot of fitness influencers. And I actually worked with him for a while because I took his mentorship and I just really appreciated his take, so I'm hired him as my coach because sometimes I just like to hire people and see what they program and work with them. And I also like Olympic lifting, and he's a good coach and he's got really good takes. I think his take on training is like cooking, which is not the first person to ever do that, but like it's a very good one and it's a good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious to see because you were in the middle of that and I was like, man, I don't want to be in the middle of that.
It was fun. I like trying to stay in the middle and be the like unbiased, just like ask thought-provoking questions. I would love to moderate some more debates or host a podcast in the future because it was definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I think we probably could have kept going for a couple more hours. I feel like you put those two in a room, they'll argue until the end of time.
Yeah, I think it's just like lawyers being lawyers. Like, it's like because at the end of the day, they're probably not as far apart as
Right.
And
Exactly.
honestly, I think a lot of this, I'm just as my own take. I don't really care. And I say don't start drama, and then I kind of start drama, but I think Angus just did that for engagement. Like I think a lot
Yeah.
of it was, hey, let's get more. And that's the nature of the beast. And if you're okay with that, that's not really how I want to build a brand, quote unquote. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Angus is okay with that. He literally, I like was joking with him. He's like, dude, that's my personality. Like I'm gonna go after shit like that. And I'm okay.
Yeah.
If that's not yours, then don't do it. I'm like, yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
point. So
I think that more people in the industry need to model themselves or act more like Angus in the sense that he doesn't take it too seriously.
yeah.
Like he takes it seriously enough to like go to the trouble to put on a debate and like make content about it and stuff like that. But I think at the end of the day, he's just kind of having a good time with it all, which I think is great to see. I think too many people in this space take things way too personally.
Yeah. Your recent interaction with somebody that I won't name, if you want to know, you can, is a pretty good evidence. It's pretty good evidence of that because like that was a instance of someone putting out a post that's literally for engagement, right? That
Yeah.
you commented on, asking honestly just I think relatively thought-provoking questions, right? And then someone else coming in and just like basically like, okay, you're just showing your true colors here, right?
Yeah.
So like, okay, because and that's been one thing I also saw that is a good point to some extent is like, you know, that same influencer put out like, if you can't read research, like researchers are going to interpret
exactly.
research. Like, okay, so you don't want me to just try to read research? Like, I can't interpret information. I get that I'm not going to understand what the p values of some of this stuff are or whatever, right? But like, the whole point of this stuff and making it open access is so that people can try and start
right.
to then ask other questions, right? So, anyway, so a diatribe there. When it comes to hybrid training, you got somebody because you posted. This is something I think I commented on because you like posted your like full split, and then and I think other people did this too. I'm like, of the 3,000 likes you got, 1,500 of these people are gonna go and just themselves by Wednesday.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like running hybrid type of programming, right? Maybe in the way that you do, what are the biggest tips to consider for somebody who's like maybe they've been doing some CrossFit, maybe they've done some running, maybe they're doing some lifting, but what are the things you would say to guide them from a
Yeah.
tree level, like, hey, don't, or the forest level, I should say, not the trees.
Yeah. Well, the first thing would be don't just go out and run my split. That's probably a bad idea. Um, my like number one piece of advice that I give people when they're interested in starting is just do a lot less than you think.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot to just put together a strength program and an endurance program. You can probably start with half of each and see how it goes and ramp up over time. It's all about figuring out kind of minimum effective dose for all the different qualities that you need to work on. I think that there's a lot that really any athlete can learn from the hybrid approach to things, because when you're a hybrid athlete, basically like the biggest differentiating factor between a hybrid program and any single sport program is there's just less room for error. There's less room for junk volume. There's less room for unnecessary fatigue. But I think that any athlete could do well to remove inefficient training and unnecessary fatigue. I think anyone can benefit from that. I think running a hybrid program just magnifies potentially some of the errors that people make, because you can't get away with as much unnecessary fatigue. The margin of error just isn't there. So I think that when people do have programs that have a lot of kind of superfluous fluff of like whether it's a 30-minute warm-up routine that could probably be whittled down to 10, or they have 4 sets of every exercise when probably 3 would be enough for their program. When you take like all these sorts of things, it's like, yeah, that's a little bit extra, but you can get away with it. Add a conditioning program on top of that, and you can't get away with that shit anymore.
Yeah.
So it's really just about trim all the unnecessary fat and fluff off the program, be as efficient as you possibly can. And when you do that, you probably have more time than you think. Because people will be like, I don't know how I'm gonna have time to add cardio in. And you look at their program, it's like, well, you're at the gym for like 2 hours to do like 8 effective sets.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
The
it's like,
effective sets type of mentality. I mean, it's like it's really like 2. If I can get like 2 warm-up sets and then like these are 2, and that's been something that's really been a good, I think that's been positive influential for me is like, yeah, if you need like 2 stimulative sets for when you're kind of blending stuff together, especially if you're not trying to be, like if you're not Mike to share or, being a power lifter type stuff, like,
yeah.
yes, maybe for those guys who really want to get good at bench press, they're going to need 6 sets of 3 to 4 or whatever. Right. But like, if you're just trying to generally keep your bench press moving, not that much. Right. So,
Yeah,
um,
exactly. Yeah, so that's my main deal for people is just like be as efficient as possible. Maybe 2 working sets for a couple different exercises instead of 3 or 4. Minimal warm up, just like kind of only as much as you need, whatever that looks like for you. On the conditioning side of things, cut the like kind of bullshit recovery workouts that are like zone 0, zone 1, that kind of stuff. Because you're already going to the gym like 3, 4, 5 times a week and getting some just general movement with your lifts and stuff like that. You don't need a zone 0 recovery ride on the weekend. Like just either rest or train in the context of a hybrid. So for like low intensity work, I'm generally pushing people to like actually operate in their true zone 2, close to aerobic threshold, get as much kind of bang for your buck out of your low to moderate intensity work as you can, as opposed to I think a lot of people undershoot that kind of stuff. They undershoot it and then they wonder why they're spending so many hours for minimal payoff. So really the whole thing is just if you actually make sure that every single session you do and every single minute that you spend training is serving a purpose, it's not going to take as much total training as you think that it's going to take. It's not going to be as time demanding as you think it's going to take. You might be able to take your 90 minutes at the gym, turn it into 55 minutes, get in 30 minutes of conditioning, and you're still getting, all the benefit plus some.
when it, so, when the things that people overcomplicate, I think one of your big ones is like zone training, uh, RPE oriented stuff to some extent. Like I think RPE is a great framework, but it's like if you're RP 3 to 4 on a run, as long as you're like you're RP 4 to 5, like it doesn't matter that much. I think people get really nitpicky. But are there any other things that you see people get bogged down with overcomplicating?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, on the conditioning side, I think that most people think it needs to be more complicated. with like more periodization and more customization. So they'll be like, okay, so I'm doing maybe the first workout they came up with for themselves is like a 8 by 3 minute interval session or something like that. And they're like, okay, how do I progress this? Like, I'm doing this now. What should it look like in 4 weeks? Should I progress from 3 to 4 minutes? Should I decrease the rest? Whatever. And like, just keep doing that workout for a long, just keep doing that workout for a pretty long time. Like whether you decide to extend from 3 minutes to 3 minutes and 15 seconds at that pace or do it slightly faster or whatever, at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. Like within reason, all those workouts are accomplishing pretty much the same objective at the end of the day. So just stick with it and do anything to make it 1% better by the end of the month if you can. But people overthink kind of exactly what progression they should be making, or they start making these like really complicated like blended workouts that try to do too much in one session. So they're like going to do 3 by 3 minutes and then 3 by 1 minute and then this and then that, and all of a sudden their workout has like 5 parts, and it's like just some straight repeats, like 8 by 3 minutes. Do that for the next 4 to 6 months, and hopefully in 4 to 6 months you're running those 3 minute intervals a little bit faster than you were today. If you do that, you're going to be fine. So you don't have to overcomplicate your approach to intensity either. Simple progressions are good.
All right, last 2 questions. When it comes to you talk about running on tired legs, like I just think about like the weekly dose of training is what I'm trying to get after, right? So if I squat on Monday and I want to have a run on Tuesday, in the aggregate, that's going to buff out. Yeah, maybe you switch that up where you don't want to squat with fatigued legs, or you don't want to run with fatigued legs based on what you're trying to train. But in the aggregate, it's going to buff out as long as you're generally getting like kind of the stimulus that you want. But you talk about running like on trash legs on a regular basis, which is good because I think people just need to know, like, I don't feel fucking good today, and I still did the thing, right?
Exactly.
I guess I don't have a question there. I just wanted to reiterate that. I think it's really important.
I mean, I have some things to expand on there. I kind of like exaggerate a little bit, right? When I'm like, I just run on trashed legs and who cares? I think there's a limit to like how trashed your legs should get. But I also think most of the time when I talk to people who are like, my legs are just completely fucked, man. I'm like, well, what are you doing exactly? Like, why are they in that bad a shape? Like, you shouldn't just be completely destroyed. Like, I don't understand what's going on. And like, this, and I'm sure most people listening know this, but like soreness, for example, one of the biggest drivers of soreness is just novelty. Like, you change stuff up, you do a different exercise, you get into a new range of motion. Like, anytime you make big changes to the movements, you're going to get more sore and probably feel a little bit more fatigued. If you're consistent, you can still train pretty damn hard. Like, even if it's a high volume workout, if you've been doing that high volume workout, maybe you're doing German volume training for like here, maybe you're doing like 10 by 10 squat program, which is silly to do with a hybrid program, especially. But if you do 10 by 10 squats and you've been doing that for 3 straight months, you're going to be pretty well adapted to that at that point. And I would have a hard time believing that even that individual is going to feel that bad going out for a run afterwards or the next day, because they've taken the time and the consistency to get used to that stimulus. What I don't like to see is someone go in and they're like, I was doing, squats last week, I'm going to do lunges this week, and then this other new exercise that hasn't been in my program, I'm going to get super fucking sore, and then I'm going to go and try to run, and I'm going to complain that like it's hard to combine strength and cardio. It's like, yeah, if you're not consistent and you're getting sore all the time and like you're not managing your stress very well, then it's going to be really challenging. But I think that you can do more than you think if you keep things simple and keep things consistent. There's going to be some fatigue. That's always unavoidable to a degree. But I think it's the bigger issue is people not being consistent than it is like people training too hard.
Yeah. It's because there's one thing there that I was going to ask, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it's like, there is a, like, the pendulum always swings, right? There's like, you got to be specific and it's got to be progressive, or you're not going to make progress, right? And then there was like, oh, variation is a super powerful tool, right? For like, honestly, just intent, right? And getting you to, and I honestly think this is where it really I really think it works is like kind of with the Olympic lifts, because like just doing like snatches for me, like if I know I hit like I had a good snatch week last week, and then I this week I'm just kind of feeling like garbage. But like changing it from a full snatch to like a pause snatch at the knee gets me to actually intentionally work harder. Like it's not
Oh
that
yeah.
different of a stimulus. So it's kind of like, yeah, you got to keep the stimulus relatively the same. But if it's like, yeah, like one week I'm doing, front squats, and then the next week I'm doing like a weird, like just a different squat variation that, or just some different leg strength, oriented thing. It's like, yeah, you're not really getting good at the task either. And that can be problematic. Right.
Yeah.
But you can do a lot of different things in the space. It's really just like, are you going to stay with it long enough to make it work or see if it works? Right.
Yeah.
And that's where
Yeah.
people go wrong is like they're like, I did this for 6 weeks and it doesn't seem like it was working. And like, well, if we zone out and zoom out, like it kind of was. It's just gonna take longer for that stimulus to like accumulate type of thing, right?
Yeah.
All right, last question. What are your 3 least favorite exercises?
My 3 least favorite exercises. Oh God. All right. All right. Um,
Or what are
so
the exercises when you see somebody do them in the gym? You're like, fuck, why are you doing that?
um, I hate seeing, I mean, anything that just gets severely underloaded. I love single leg deadlifts. I get angry when I see people do them 99% of the time. Um, I love them. I hate watching everyone use the same 35 to 53 pound kettlebell. Doesn't matter if it's like a 100-pound girl or a 250-pound male power lifter. Everyone reaches for the same damn kettlebell to do their single leg deadlifts, and it drives me absolutely bonkers. Um, so that would be one, is just like load that up because it's a great exercise, but I don't like it in the context of how I see it done.
Yep.
Um,
Accessory movements in general, like, right, like you just
yeah.
squatted 405 and then you're coming over and you're doing like you're doing like goblet lunges with 35 pounds. It's like, all right, like this is not doing anything, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that.
Um, I don't love I don't love hip thrusts for strong people because they're such a pain in the ass when you
The
actually get
load.
good at them.
Yeah.
Um, like if you can get a good stimulus from like a plate or two, then knock yourself out. Um, but like anytime I've like been like, okay, I'm gonna try to do a hip thrust progression, I'm gonna give it a shot. Um, I'll get like 2, 3 weeks in and be like, this is such a pain in the ass. And my like I feel like I'm gonna throw up from like all this weight going into my stomach. I'm like, I don't know who has the time or energy to like set up this station with like 7, 8 plates and just like destroy their internal organs. Um, Single leg, I'm just like, I'd rather just do single leg or something like that. I find it's just like a lot more efficient for actually strong people. Especially if you don't have like a good machine with like a good belt pad system. I just find they're a pain in the ass. So that's more of a personal preference than like a don't like the
That's okay. I
intended
think
stimulus or anything.
that's an okay personal preference. I'm with you there.
Um, God, there's a lot of glute stuff I don't care for because I think there's a lot of just wacky stuff with glute training. Probably cable kickbacks. I don't love just because like if you work out the the like physics and leverage of what's going on and like draw the lever arms and like look at where the force is going, people just are not actually getting a significant amount of load.
Loading, yeah.
They're like
Which
getting they're
I just
squeezing at the end, but they're not
yeah.
getting a good amount of load. At least not
Just
the way most people do it.
thinking about your brain as a physicist and just like because I was thinking about this earlier, actually, so I ran a run before this. It's like my lunch break, so I went on a 20-minute run, and I'm like, I'm talking to this guy, and I've been getting into running more. I really enjoyed running, and then I went through that arc of, oh, the what's the gosh, I can't even think of the effect right now. Uh, the interference effect. I'm like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
the interference effect. You can't do this stuff. And they're like, oh, okay, so that's bullshit. It's really about a lot of things. But I was just thinking about, yeah, like just leverages. And I'm like, oh yeah, this guy's is a physicist. Like when you start to actually look at things from that perspective, it changes your view on
yeah,
exercise. And it's hard because like physics are hard. Like understanding lever arms and how to load things and like what's actually happening at a joint is not easy for a lot of people to conceptualize. But when you get to
Yeah.
that point, it really makes a lot of things come to light. So yeah, I bet your big brain is like it likes that for sure.
Yeah.
Do you still do like physics or anything like that from like a practical like equations or anything like that just for fun or not so much?
I had a napkin out in the kitchen the other day, like drawing some sketches of some pulleys and stuff like that. Because an influencer made a post about something with cables and pulleys and momentum and stuff, and I was like, I don't think that's right. So I like got out the napkin, like started writing out the equations. I'm like, yeah, they're definitely wrong, but I'm not gonna be that guy right now. I just like I just threw the napkin away. I'm like, oh fuck it, I'll save it for another day.
There you go. Well, man, I appreciate your time. Appreciate your content and your take. And yeah, like again, I think yeah, you can make beef on it about anything, but I do think it seems like you're doing it the way that feels good to you and it is right by people. So I appreciate that. And yeah, thanks for your time, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you having me on. Would love to chat again in the future if you're down for it.
Sounds good, man. Tell people where to find you.
Yeah, find me on Instagram at Alec Blenis. I have all my links and programs, and try to do a Q&A on the story once in a while. But yeah, just find me there. If you have questions or anything like that, feel free to send me a message.
Sweet. All right, man. Great job at that. That was another thing I was gonna ask you about, but I forgot about it. But the marathon you ran in Switzerland looked pretty dope. So,
Yeah,
uh,
dude,
kudos to you on that. It looks like a fun time.
that was hard. I'm still kind of recovering from it because I made the mistake, the willful, intentional mistake to I did that marathon on a Saturday, and then I met up with a friend who was in Europe. I'm like, I should do a workout with you. So a couple days later, met up and did a workout that I was not prepared for, like
Yeah,
recovery wise.
yeah.
And then I got home back in the States later that week, and like my favorite local trail half marathon was that weekend. I'm like, oh, I gotta do this. I'm like, this everything about this is stupid. And I knew that going in, but that like combination of those like three things in a week, I was like so fried. And even now I'm slowly coming back. I'm like, man, that was a hell of a week. Don't do that.
I think stupidity is anti-fragile.
Yeah.
But I mean, most of the lessons come from like pushing into something. Like, I mean, I've been rehabbing my groin for too long because even though I'm a physical therapist and I probably could have done a better job calming it
Oh
down
yeah.
and building it up, I was prepping for an Olympic lifting meet that I really wanted to make, and I like kept freaking trying to and muscular strains are probably the worst. Like, cause like tendinopathies don't give a shit about to some extent, right? uh a tennis elbow don't give a shit about like stuff like that I just went through at the same time as this. But like muscular strains, you actually got to let it like start to heal a little bit before you start to load it, otherwise it's just going to be a pissed off thing for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
And but yeah, it's like, but I also, that being dumb has now allowed me to like, somebody's going through it, I can actually be like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm
I've
like,
made I've made all the mistakes. Let me
I've
tell you,
done
bud.
that, and that, I feel bad for you, but let's just actually like let it calm down. And there's ways to work around this. So yeah, but
Yeah.
I think that's one big thing. The last thing just is like training, and I made a post on this yesterday. Training is a freaking experiment. You have to be okay with running that experiment and assessing. So much of our current space, and I've been through this too, is like I've got this perfect 16-week program laid out. And then at week 4, you're like, fuck, this is a lot. I can't handle
Yeah.
this. And instead of making an adjustment, you're like, I'm just gonna keep doing it. And it's like,
Yeah.
no, it's reacting appropriately and responding, right?
Well, and what I always want to help people do is like not necessarily guide people towards the most intelligent thing they can do, but help people do what they want to do in the
Yeah,
smartest way possible.
yeah.
And so people be like, hey, what do you think of like, me running a marathon and like the week after doing a powerlifting meet? I'm like, well, it's a really stupid idea.
But I
But
like
I'd love to I'd love to help.
yeah, I'm
So
100% on board with that, because
exactly.
that's what this is about. It's not about whether or not you win those two things per se. It's about like, is that going to make you happy? Because at the end
Yeah,
of the day, that's what we're trying to do. Like, this is about
exactly.
enjoying the process and being happy. And if that process gets you to train, great, right?
Exactly.
So yeah, no, I appreciate that insight because I'm with you there. So man, I appreciate your time. Take it easy. I will I'll post this probably in the next couple days and probably Monday or so. And but I appreciate your time. Peace, man.
Sweet. Thanks, man. You too.
See ya.
Bye.